I think that Okafor was pretty clearly the best prospect available at that point. It's hard to say whether there was any kind of a deal available, whether Orlando wanted to try to jump in ahead of New York and get Kristaps Porzingis, and you move down a couple of spots and maybe try to get Emmanuel Mudiay there. But that's pretty speculative to try to think about that. I mean, I think that Okafor was the best prospect. So if you're going strictly best player available, that maximizes the value, but it definitely creates some issues in terms of how you fit these guys together.
If you were to, you're inside a front office and you make that pick, what are you telling your coach right now how to work that out? I mean, obviously the coach that's his job to figure it out, but is that something that you would, if you're a GM, Kevin, would you try to avoid?
I certainly would try to. I mean, you've already been trying to work this out because you knew the possibility of Noel and Embiid playing together, that Noel was going to be playing some power forward. I think the reason it's tougher with three of those guys if Embiid is healthy is because, that in that scenario, Noel is also probably playing the backup minutes at center in addition to the minutes he's playing at power forward with Embiid. If you have all three of those guys, then suddenly it's Okafor and Embiid trying to split the center minutes, and Noel is strictly playing power forward. It reminds me a little bit of what happened to Phoenix this past season when they added Isaiah Thomas to the combination of Goran Dragic and Eric Bledsoe. When they had just Dragic and Bledsoe, especially because Bledsoe was injured the previous season, Dragic mostly played point guard. They only played together a little bit. But then when you added Thomas to that mix, suddenly there were very few minutes where Dragic was the only point guard on the court, and that changed things considerably.
So initially, Okafor is the rookie here. Noel comes in, and then obviously we don't know what Embiid's status is. We're all hopeful that he'll be able to play. But initially, this looks like a tough fit for the three of these guys together. Would you anticipate then, if you're Sam Hinkie, that he's working the phones? It sounds like he wants to keep Okafor. I would assume Embiid's pretty tough to trade right now. Would you be calling around trying to see if anybody's interested in Noel?
I don't know if I'd be shopping him. I mean, I think you're open to offers, as the Sixers have pretty much indicated they are at all times. If you're going to get good value, there was talk for a while about a Marcus Smart Nerlens Noel deal, and I'm not sure, which side would like that better one for one, or who would want to add something in there. But if that kind of deal comes along where you are getting a guy who is also a top draft pick and is also very valuable, then maybe you consider that sort of thing. But I don't think you're out there putting the for sale sign on any of these guys at this point.
They have the third pick. They take Okafor. Obviously, now we're talking about this. You said they could have possibly, or should have possibly, we don't know if they could have or not, tried to trade back. That might have been the best spot there. But would it have been a mistake for them to pass on Okafor?
I mean, he was definitely the best player available. So, if you're looking to maximize the return on the pick, I think, we talk about this all the time, that teams at the top of the draft generally should not consider need, that they should just be going to trying to get whoever they evaluate as the best player. Now, this is an extreme enough situation where maybe that didn't apply, but I would feel hesitant to pass up on a guy I really thought was a legitimately much better prospect simply because of need at this point in the development stage, because you're not going to win it this season anyway. It's just a question of how it affects these guys' long-term development and long-term value.
So many Kevin, so many people, fans would say, all right, they took Okafor, there's three guys here, they have no guards, what's the plan? Do you look at the Sixers and say, I understand their plan? Do you see a plan? Do you know what the plan is? How would you describe the Sixers' quote-unquote plan?
I think that's something that probably we pay more attention to on the outside than front offices do on the inside. You're not always sitting around saying, this is our Stalin-esque 5-year plan that we have to follow. Okay, well, this is the year we add a guard. There's too much randomness in the process to really try to control it that way. But what you don't see at this point, which is, I think, disappointing, understandably, is how this becomes a basketball team, how this goes from being a collection of assets to a basketball team. And if you had been able to draft D'Angelo Russell this year, it would be a little easier to see that, because all of a sudden you've got him as your ball handler. You've got some intriguing prospects on the wings, no surefire stars, but guys who can be part of a rotation. And then you've got the big guys. Now it's a little tougher to see how this goes from assets to team.
Yeah, they have their potentially, anyway, 4 first-round picks next year. They have the 3 big men they have now, and they have $60 million in cap space moving forward here. Is that a position that you would like to be in as a general manager in the NBA?
In the rough outline, certainly. I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can improve, and I think that's what you like to have as a front office, is that kind of flexibility. I think one of the big challenges will be, showing players that they are an interesting enough team that they'll be willing to take their money, and that's where I think having a stronger season, moving towards competitiveness this year, probably would have helped them.
You look at this team now: Okafor, Noel, Embiid if he plays, even if Embiid doesn't play, just adding Okafor, Covington, Tony Roten, what they have. Is this a team that looks like they're ready to jump out of the teens in the win range?
I can see them getting into the 20s. I mean, I think it is a better team than the last couple of years. We shouldn't understate that they have improved. Okafor alone should be an upgrade for all the issues that he creates in terms of fit. He's a really good prospect, especially at the offensive end, who's going to help right away, and I think has an excellent chance at winning Rookie of the Year.
I get so many people that tweet at me that say, I haven't seen progress, I'm done. They went from 19 wins to 18. Where's the progress? I haven't seen any progress. Have you seen this franchise make progress?
Yeah, I think when you compare to where they were 2 years ago, there's certainly a lot more talent on the roster. And we've seen some of these incremental moves around the edges start to bear fruit. I think Robert Covington being the most prominent example of that. He's a guy who could be part of the next great Sixers team. And, other than at that point Carter Williams and Noel, I don't know that there was anyone on the roster the first year who had a chance of being part of the next great Sixers team.
Well, to hear the next great Sixers team at least means there could be one coming, which I think for the last 2 years would be pretty hard to say. We're talking with Kevin Pelton, ESPN.com NBA insider. You got a piece up over at ESPN.com about NBA free agency and Kevin Love, and you think the Cavaliers need to re-sign him. Is that the best fit for him? Do you think there's any chance that he could say, you know what, I didn't like my role here, I'm getting out?
There's always a chance, which is why players have that option in free agency, and some intriguing alternatives out there. I'd look at Houston if I were him, which I think could better use him and be on a competitive team. But the fact is, he's going to be hard pressed to go to a team with a better chance of winning the championship than the Cleveland Cavaliers. If he comes back and all their other free agents return, they're the clear favorite in the Eastern Conference and maybe the favorite overall. And part of that is how well they played last season when Love was in the lineup after they added Smith and Mozgov and Shumpert. I mean, their starting lineup, as I wrote in that piece, was as good as basically any in the NBA, very much on par with the Golden State Warriors starting lineup, and actually surprisingly strong defensively after they got those guys in the lineup.
Kevin, let's look at some of the other free agents then. Let's start at the top. LeBron, any shot he leaves Cleveland, is this a game that he wants to play, or is this just a formality?
Just a formality. I wouldn't even put this on the any chance rule. I mean, if every single other Cleveland free agent defected because Dan Gilbert decided he was unwilling to pay them in that extreme scenario, then that's the one chance that he could leave, but it's close to 100%.
The next guy, I guess, and it's funny because the Sixers, if there was a report out there that Jimmy Butler was going to meet with the Sixers, among other teams, would you read that as that's just them doing due diligence, or does that say that the Sixers are interested in, making a move if that move exists?
Well, I think the interesting question that a team like the Sixers has to confront is, are you better off signing Jimmy Butler to an offer sheet, in which case it would have to be for at least 3 years in his case. He's not on the market for that span. Or do you want to take the chance that Chicago isn't willing to come down off their 5-year offer that they were required to tender him with the maximum qualifying offer that they made yesterday, and that Butler says, no, I don't want to be locked up for 5 years. I want to hit free agency again while I'm a young player and maximize my chances at making some of this rising salary cap money. And so he could take the qualifying offer, 1-year deal, go back into free agency next year as an unrestricted free agent, and that's when a team like Philly might actually have a chance to sign him, or at least he takes up some money from someone else and clogs up the market. So that's the calculation I think that has to go through Sam Hinkie's head on a guy like Butler.
A guy like Butler, if you're a guy like Butler, do you look at Philadelphia as attractive? I know I've heard and we've talked about agents might not like what they're doing and yada, yada, yada. But if you're a player and Philly has money, and you're a guard, do you want to play there?
I mean, I think it's probably going to take a premium, and the situation with a guy like Butler is anyone who's going to offer him is going to offer him the max. So, the reason there was a lot of talk about, an offer sheet coming from the Lakers, because, that's understandably a more attractive destination at this point.
All right, let's look at some of the other free agents, and it's a shame for the Philly because if they wanted to do something, it's going to be hard because most of these guys are big men. But Marc Gasol, back to Memphis, or do you think there's a better fit?
Looks like almost certainly back to Memphis. Grizzlies executives reportedly headed to Barcelona to meet with him first thing tomorrow, and he hasn't planned any other meetings. It'd be a stunner if he didn't go back.
LaMarcus Aldridge is interesting because as we're talking about the Sixers, if he went to San Antonio, they would have a plethora of big men out there. Is that the favorite for him, or is there another sneaky team?
Does seem to be the favorite. From his home state, played college ball just up the road at Texas in Austin, and the chance to win there. So it seems likely. And San Antonio would have to make a move to create some more cap space to have room for Aldridge, probably trading, I think, Boris Diaw more likely than Tiago Splitter.
How could the Clippers let DeAndre Jordan go? If they end up letting him go, that would be a pretty big loss for them, wouldn't it?
And they've done everything in their power to re-sign him. Doc Rivers has been clear from the start. Hey, we're going to offer him all the money we can, all the money he wants. Reportedly, according to our Chris Broussard, interested in a 3-year deal with a player option on the 4th year. But he's unrestricted. So if he wants to go again back to his home state of Texas and play for the Dallas Mavericks, I think that's a reasonable possibility.
This Dragic is interesting because he is a guard, and obviously he got traded last year, and he's with Miami. What is the feeling on where he could end up?
The report from ESPN's Mark Stein was that they were planning to offer him a 5-year, $80 million deal, and I don't think that's going to be enough to get it done because he can get a similar amount of money over 4 years from a team with max cap space. The Lakers, the Knicks, there was reportedly some interest from both of those teams. The Lakers have a point guard now, with D'Angelo Russell, so they're probably out of the mix, but I could still see New York potentially being interested and forcing Miami to up that offer and to bring him back.
You like him? Would he be a good fit if Philadelphia said, hey, we need a point guard? Everyone saying, hey, they need a point. Would he be a guy if they spent money on? Should Sixer fans be happy if they were interested?
I don't think so because, if you're looking to spend on a guy like that who's in his late 20s on a long-term deal, then, basically you need to get value out of that contract right now because it's probably going to get a little bit ugly on the back end, and a team like the Sixers wouldn't be able to do that.
We're talking with Kevin Pelton, ESPN.com, NBA insider. Kawhi Leonard, no shot of him leaving San Antonio, right?
Well, again, restricted, so they can match anything and certainly will. Someone could make the Aldridge pursuit a little more difficult by signing him to an offer sheet, but sounds like Leonard is on board with everything they're doing, and they're going to just take care of him after they're done pursuing Aldridge. What
do you think of the Dwayne Wade story here? We know he wants a lot of money. He wants to kind of make up for some of the money that he let go. Do you see this getting ugly?
I still think he's bluffing because I don't think that kind of money is out there for him. There was talk about the Lakers again, but I can't imagine that they would be interested in pairing him and Kobe Bryant and D'Angelo Russell. That doesn't make much sense for them. So I think basically he'd have to threaten credibly that he could go to Cleveland and take their $3 million taxpayer mid-level is maybe the best leverage he has with Miami to try to get them to increase their offer.
Chris Middleton, a lot of people ask me about him. Restricted, though. Is it a slam dunk that Milwaukee brings him back?
I think they will probably match anything. He's the kind of guy I could definitely see the Sixers signing to an offer sheet to force his original team to max him out. And because of the fact that he was a second-round pick, he's not eligible for that maximum qualifying offer like Butler, so you could sign him to one of those Chandler Parsons-style offer sheets where it's 2 years guaranteed and the player option on the 3rd year, and he gets a chance to get back into free agency pretty quickly.
You like him? I mean, he kind of came out of nowhere. As you mentioned, second-round pick. Is he a guy that you think can stick in this league?
Oh, I do like him quite a bit because, he's a 3-and-D specialist, but he's also got the ability to create his own offense a little bit. So that makes him valuable, and he's only, I think, 23 at this point, so it's still room to grow. So I'd match anything if I were Milwaukee. And I think Philly's really, what they're trying to do is create their own Chris Middleton by drafting some of these guys who are really athletic wing players and hoping that they can develop a three-point game.
A couple other interesting guys that might be the kind of fits, DeMarre Carroll's another one from Atlanta. Would he be, he's an unrestricted guy. There's very few unrestricted guys that seem like they would make sense. Would he be one?
Again, a little bit older. Contract would take him into his 30s. So I think you're probably better off staying away, but definitely someone who will be pursued by a lot of teams, I think, in that role. There's a few 3-and-D guys out there on the market. Danny Green from San Antonio, Wesley Matthews from Portland coming off the Achilles injury, and those guys in Carroll are all going to get, I think, upwards of $10 million a year.
All right, Kevin Pelton here, and NBA free agency starts at midnight. And, of course, we'll see if the Sixers get involved. Very doubtful that they were able to do much here. $60 million to spend next year, though. They've said it here, this starts now, but really now means later, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could see them looking at some bargain free agents, guys who, have sort of like Thomas Robinson, the guy they picked up on waivers last year, someone in that mold where they've maybe washed out with their first team but still young enough to have some potential. Derek Williams from Sacramento is a guy in that mold. I could see one or two of those types of players.
All right, we'll see if some action happens tonight at midnight. Kevin Pelton over at ESPN.com. Always good to catch up with you, Kevin.
All right, thanks for having me.